Hi, I'm Scott. Welcome to episode 8 of GoldwingDocs. You got questions, we got answers. Coming up next. We got so many questions from people. Sometimes it's hard trying to pick them. I want to get questions that apply to more than just one type of Goldwing so that most people can get some kind of benefit from it. If you have a very specific question about a certain model of bike that only applies to that one model of bike, I'd suggest post it in the GoldwingDocs forum. Yeah, because we'll have like a 1500 section or 1800 section, and you can actually post your question there, and we have tons of friendly people that will answer it and get right back to you. If you have more of a general question that might apply to several different models, or you just want to have it answered here, post your question in the comments below. We read all the comments, and we've got so many good questions from you, so keep it up. All right, first question today is from Wingspan1. We have a 2015 Goldwing anniversary. While sitting stationary, I can make the shocks move up and down. When moving slowly and applying the front brake, the front end seems to be very solid. I can't take it out on the road right now to see how it feels when hitting rough spots because of our weather. I've read a few articles on the anti-dive valve system. Does anyone have any ideas on how to actually check this valve out? Okay, so what you're talking about is anti-dive, correctly discerned. What you're describing is actually correct behavior. So if you think about it, we need soft compliant suspension on our motorcycle to absorb impacts from bumps. So you're riding along and the wheel hits a bump and gets shoved up by that bump. If we didn't have suspension, that would just lift the whole bike. Now the whole bike lifts up. More importantly, the wheel's now not on the ground. And as the bike comes back down, the wheel hits the ground, the wheel's gonna bounce a couple times, and that's not good. Yes, the role of suspension is to give yourself a nice compliant ride, but more importantly, the role of suspension is to keep the wheels on the ground as much as possible. Now you have valving in there that tries to shove the wheel back down and not let it bounce back up and that sort of thing. But what you're talking about is as a result of having a compliant ride. We've got this nice road sofa of a motorcycle here. We want a nice, soft, compliant ride because we're gonna be spending many, many hours on it on long distance rides. I've ridden this actual bike 20 hours straight before, and it's a nice, comfortable place to be. However, in having that nice, compliant ride where it's easy to push the suspension up and down, what happens when you need to do things like brake or accelerate or corner? You don't want it just wallowing around because that means you have a motorcycle that rides like a 1970s Ford LTD, or Mercury Marquis. Remember those huge 1970s boats? You turn right around the corner and the whole car leans this way, and as you come to a stop, it kind of just moves around literally like a boat on the water. We don't want that, especially on a motorcycle, because if you brake on a motorcycle and the thing dives like this, okay, yes, it's not comfortable, but you got to hang on. At least in a car, you're strapped in place. The car dives, you're not going anywhere. The motorcycle, if you brake hard and the bike pitches forward, it's trying to pitch you off the bike, and you got to hang on for dear life. So that's not great. We don't want that to happen. So what Honda did was create something called track anti-dive, and this is from the early 1980s. What that does is it has a little valve in the front that is actuated by the brakes. When you hit the front brakes on your motorcycle, the caliper actually gets pushed in by the rotation of the wheel just a little bit. And that pushing in actually actuates a small valve. That valve constricts the internal valving of the suspension of your front forks. What that does is restrict how quickly the shock fluid or the shock oil can move between chambers. Effectively, it stiffens the front end. So when you might be sitting on your bike and you can push it forward and you can actually rock it back and forth, that's not what's happening when you're braking, because if you brake, instead of it allowing the front forks to compress in easily, it almost locks them up, and that keeps the bike from pitching forward because those shocks are basically locked up. So that's exactly what's supposed to be happening. So what you're describing is when you move the shocks up and down manually, that's fine because the track anti-dive isn't active. That only gets activated when you're actually riding the bike, the wheels are turning, and you actuate the brake. That actuates the anti-dive valve, which then locks up the front end and prevents the bike from diving. Now, if you're out riding and you hit the brakes and the whole bike just pitches forward like that, maybe you have a problem with that anti-dive system. It's not working correctly, and then you want to have a look at that. All right, next question. PL Smithy. I have a GL 1500 and it looks like the dashboard is melted. How did this happen? Okay, well, this definitely is a problem with 1500s and especially 1500s with the Tulsa Tall windshield, which I have here on mine. So what the problem is solar radiation, believe it or not. If you park with the sun behind you, this windshield acts as a giant parabolic mirror, and the sun hits this, gets concentrated down, and where it ends up is on your dashboard. And you can get strong sun hitting there, concentrated into a tiny spot on your dashboard, and it will heat up the plastic inside the dash or around the dash here so hot that it actually physically melts. And that's what's happened to your bike. It's actually happened to my bike. If you have a look at the ignition ring around the key here, you can see it's actually blistered and melted, and that's exactly how that happened. I parked with the sun behind me. So if you have any Goldwing really, but especially a 1500, and especially if you have a tall windshield like this, make sure that wherever you park, you're facing towards the sun and don't have it behind you. If you can't get around that, say that where you park at work, you have to park a certain way and the sun's going to be behind you, here's what I use. This is a nice little product that I got. I will put a link to it in the description below. And what it is just it's a racket rack. There's the name of it there. Anyway, you just stick it over top of your windshield like that, and it covers up the dash, and it has little Velcro tabs you can put on here. Just like that. And it has little elastic things here that you can put around your mirror or your adjusting things, so it can't be blown off. And typically what I will do is I will open my fuel tank hatch here and I will just stuff it in there and then lock it on top so that nobody can actually steal it. And this, as you can see, completely covers the windshield and the dashboard. It prevents dust and stuff from getting on the windshield, but more importantly, it prevents the sun from getting in here and melting everything. When you need to go, you just yank it off. If you undo the elastic first, and you're good to go. So definitely check out the link. I'll put a link to this in the description below. It's definitely a product worth having. Some people will use old t-shirts and just kind of stretch over the top. I've used that in the past, but I've found that A, they tend to blow off, and B, people steal them. I don't know, I've lost like 2 or 3 t-shirts. I had old t-shirts, and for whatever reason, people don't like seeing t-shirts on their motorcycles, and I don't know, they just steal them. And it also looks like crap when you have a t-shirt. It looks silly. So this, it doesn't look great, but it doesn't look terrible. All right, question number 3 from Gowan. I wonder if that's Lawrence Gowan. All right, my battery measures 12 volts, so I know it's good, but as soon as I turn the bike on, it's dead. Okay, so this is a common question we get on GoldwingDocs. People will say, well, my battery's dead, but when I measured it, it's perfectly fine. It charges, it measures fine, but as soon as I try to start the bike, it just dies. Why do I feel like I've answered this question before? If I have, I'm sorry, but here we go again. Batteries can sulfate. So what is sulfation? Sulfation is when you charge a battery, overcharge it, or otherwise abuse the battery, and the lead plates inside get a coating of lead sulfate on there. And when you have a coating on the lead plates, that doesn't allow current to flow. What that essentially means is when you are measuring your battery, it's not under load, there's no problem with the current flow because there's almost no current flowing. So you measure the battery and it's measuring 12 volts and saying, well, it's fully charged. Your smart charger does the same thing. It looks at the voltage of the battery. It says, yep, fully charged, good to go. However, as soon as you apply a load to that battery, it starts trying to pull current through those sulfated plates. And there's only a small amount of area on the plate that can actually allow current to pass. And because you've restricted the current, there's not enough current to meet the demand that's being pulled from it. What happens when you pull more current than you have available? The voltage drops. So now your battery might be dropping down to 10 or 9 volts because it can't supply the current being demanded of it. So even though the battery measures full when there's no load, as soon as you put a load on it, the voltage drops. So that's a really good way of identifying a battery that's bad, is apply a load to it and see what the voltage does. We have people that say, I try to start my bike and it just won't start, it just clicks. I measured the battery and it shows 12 volts, but it still won't start the battery. So what we always tell them is, okay, put your meter on the battery while you're trying to start the bike. If you see the voltage of the battery dropping down 6-7 volts and you're trying to start the bike, then you know that battery's dead. The battery's sulfated, you need a new battery. And often, as soon as you let go of the starter, you measure the voltage and it's going to jump back up near the 12 volts because there's no longer any load being drawn. So I suspect that's what's happened here, Mr. Gowan, that your battery is simply dead. Just replace the battery with a new quality AGM. I like the Moto Bats. I've had one in this bike for a number of years now. It still works like brand new. It's a really nice AGM battery. Inexpensive compared to a lot of the others. I'll put a link to it down below. It's a nice yellow Moto Bat. Well, that's it for this video. I hope this was of some assistance to you. If you like what you saw, please click like, subscribe, hit that little bell. It really helps us out when you do that. And you get notified anytime we post a new one of these videos. And of course, don't forget to check out the GoldwingDocs website. We've got a forum on there that has 90,000 owners just like you. And they're so friendly and willing to help with any questions or problems you might have. Thanks for watching.